All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here, of course, for Ancient Magus Bride, episode 5. Yeah, and
we're getting into the linear storyline.
Yeah, we've got some sorcerers who have abducted Chise from her abductor of sorts.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and I think this is where it's going to get a little interesting because they're doing a little bit of the melodrama thing, like you mentioned in the discussion last time. But there's opportunity for it to go in multiple angles.
Yes.
So right now they haven't committed to any specific angle yet. So we get to see in this episode which way it's going to go.
Right, which would be very cool to see.
But either way, I think that they're going to end up closer together, Chise and Elias, because they'll at the very least be a little bit more vulnerable, maybe with each other.
Right.
Maybe more Elias towards Chise than the other way around.
Sure.
And
maybe
Chise
learns a bit more of what she wants.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But also learning a little bit more about who he is and why he acquired her.
Right. Other than just because she's a slave Maggie.
Yes, but what that means. Because we knew about the time limit that she had, but now we might now find out why.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's going to be pretty exciting. So without further ado, let's get into this episode and see what goes down. Love conquers all. Oh.
Well, I get the feeling this episode's going to go pretty well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've had an idea for a story like that. Wow. Yep. Okay, that was exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Just the stress on her body.
She breaks the magical laws of conservation, basically.
Right.
Trust my deep voice.
Well, see, we're not supposed to trust his motives, but what he's saying. Yep, I knew he had a tracking spell on her. Of course he did.
Oh yeah.
Whoa. Whoa, what?
Yes!
Oh my gosh,
cat
the cats!
I have wanted to see this ever since they introduced them.
何からエリアスからだとしたらあなたは多分理解しなたとえ嘘でも私を家族と言ったのはエリアスだけあなたの言ったことが嘘でも本当でもどっちでもいいあの人は誰よりも先に私を買っただからエリアスが私の手を離すまでは私はあの人のものです
Whoa.
Wow, okay.
Oh, now
that
he's
Elias
not,
or
that's
her?
Elias. No, that's totally Elias, yeah. He is the Thorn Mage after all.
Yeah, that's true.
茨の影に潜むお前たちフィルムムーリアリスと呼ぶもの
Wow.
Very similar to the opening.
Ridiculously OP. Tentacle powers OP.
Yep, always.
人間は傷ついたらすぐ死んじゃうからね
Pale shadow of a shadow.
仕方ないだろ
私も行きましょう心配しなくても大丈夫よ私とチセがやるんだからこのよどみが消えて失せるのならその様を見届けるのが最後の王の務め
Oh, this is going to be a gorgeous set of visuals, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is. Yeah.
Yep.
So the other two just aren't bothering to try anything while Elias is there.
Yeah, she's going to that alternate kind of...
The memories of the
memories.
people.
ここははるか昔のタバン
Yeah.
食事どころですわね
Right.
Yeah.
ここはよどみの記憶の中みたいね
Very cool.
Okay.
あの人
That's Matthew.
Yeah. Oh, this is where it all started.
なあ、流しの魔術師ってあんたか
Yeah.
Let's make a deal.
こんなチビでびっくりしたかい
This person could still
何
be
か相談
alive.
でも
Yeah.
わかるのか
惚れてる
But this is
娘
a
に振り向いて
grand,
もらいたい
vast world that we
いや
don't necessarily
うちの
have
や
to
つ
see a
が
lot of
生まれつき
recurring
体が弱くて
That's true.
なんとか元気になってもらいたいんだが
奥方をとても好いてるんだね
もちろんだ
即答かい恥ずかしい男だね君
That was some unexpected comedy.
Very unexpected comedy.
奥方を直接見せてもらっ
頼むすぐ来てくれ
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
あれは嫌なやつだ
As soon as I draw this pentagram on her, then she will be fine.
Yeah. Cat's like, nah, screw that.
I don't trust this guy.
Yep.
Pointing at him through the wall. But if you sell me your soul...
Yeah.
Said the magic word.
Yeah.
奥方、猫は好きかい？そうか。ならちょうどいいかも。知ってるかい？猫には9つの命があるんだ。
No way.
The person who went around killing cats basically brought them in as a sacrifice to make
to turn her into
the king cat.
King cat, yeah.
Yep. She says kind of already figured it out. This is not equivalent exchange. That's all I'm gonna say.
The phrase kitten killer, yeah, don't go in there.
Oh.
No, don't do it.
Oh. Jeez.
They just have to show us.
Yeah, just...
Mina.
I'm doing this for you. This is all for you.
See, what I would have preferred is if instead of having him have that crazy look, instead he was like, no, you're not supposed to see this.
When you kill this many things, it starts to wear on you a little bit.
I understand that. But...
この間魔術師に見てもらっただろ。
This is what he told me to do.
作って君に飲ませれば元気になるって教えてもらったんだ。材料だよ。
Yeah, this is straight up alchemy.
9つの命があるって言うけど、あれは本当なんだって。ずるいよな。こんな果物がたくさんの命を持ってる。
Oh, okay.
ねえ、マッシュどうしたの？なんでこんなひどいことできたの？
Oh, this is so messed up.
For you, I can do anything.
Yeah.
だって君のためだから。
Love conquers all.
Oh.
大丈夫だよ。怖がらなくて。それを飲めば君は不自由な体から自由になれる。
Not able human-bodied, but
right. Yeah, you might even be able to live forever.
You have no choice.
僕のためのネズミになってよ。
Oh. Gross. It's like she's basically drinking like cat blood.
Yeah. Okay.
Cat philosopher's stone. Yeah, the hair. They show the hair.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I was wondering why this King of Cats looked so just illustrious and attractive and beautiful. Oh, maybe we were wrong, Jacob. Maybe. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, that's the corruption.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He doesn't even care.
Wow.
人間より加工は楽でも本能が強い分呪いも強いや。魂の凝縮方法の見直しからかな。
Yeah.
貴重な実験結果をありがとう、お兄さん。
I mean, maybe he has some special powers or something, but that's not going to go well for you, buddy. Like.
Oh, and he's drenching himself in it.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. He's in denial. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Oh.
そうだ。まだ足りないんだ。集めないと。
Well, no, I can understand why he would snap here.
Well, yeah.
ティム、ちょうどいいところに。
Her cat?
お前の大好きなみんなが大変なんだよ。
Yeah.
Jeez.
だから。
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
あんたはもう人間じゃない。
Oh
あ
my
んたは悪魔だ。
gosh.
悪魔に騙されてかわいそうな悪魔になっちまった。
This is
あんたを生
judgment.
かしておくわけにはいかない。安らかに死なせるわけにもいかない。
What the heck?
こいつらに選ばれた王として。
Oh.
死んだ奴らのためにもだ。
Holy
So he
crap.
cursed him.
みんな
Yeah.
みんな
So she has to cleanse that
Right.
with her soul, her magic.
Something?
嫌なものを見せてしまったわね。ごめんなさい。ないものにするの。生き物の魂はみんな巡る輪の中に帰っていくものなの。
And I want you to break the
で
cycle
も
for us.
私もマシューも
Yeah.
そこへの帰り方を忘れてしまったから。
ダメです。あなたたちはただ騙されただけで消してしまうようなものじゃない。どうすれば。待って、エアリエル、君なら、君の力なら花の種を遠くへ運ぶ風なら。
She's going to remake it. She's going to transform it.
そうね。
消したりなんかしない。大丈夫、運んでくれる。だからあなたも想像して、タンポポが種を風に乗せるみたいに、そこで芽を出して根付くように、
Wow.
行く風が吹くように。
Oh my gosh. Love the world.
その青に届かないことを知る。同じ空
みんな。
いつかは覚めるよ。
Whoa.
マシュル、思い出せ
Yeah.
るように。
ああ、みんなどこにいたんだい。
マシュル、行きましょう。マシュル。ありがとう、チセ。小さな魔法使いさん、まだこちらへ来ないよう祈ってるわ。通じ合える言葉。 誰にも欲しがられないで放り出され転がり続けて、やっと止まり木を見つけたかもしれないのに、私はいつ死ぬんだろう。
Oh boy.
Okay.
That was very. That was beautiful. Very touching. I just want to say there's a very interesting choice to have this set piece, I would say, rather than a scene. It was kind of a set piece.
Right.
Then juxtaposed after the cruel violence.
Yep.
Because
Yep.
what I think the show is going for as a theme here is the idea of just transformative power.
Right.
Basically, power that can change a person. And it's
Yes.
not necessarily that the power is magic. It's just that it's some kind of force or something that can
Right.
change a person.
They
And
kind
it can
of-
go for evil, it can go for good, it can go for anything in between. And they showed both ends in this episode
Yes.
intentionally.
Yeah. That was really like sick having
I got chills.
like having it seem like that's where they were going with the whole love conquers all. But then of course they turn it back around to this and you're like, okay, that was great.
That was magical.
Yeah, it was. And I absolutely loved the imagery of the field of the flowers, with like, even though like most of it was like just blue, like
Right.
that was absolutely gorgeous. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of times in shows like anime in particular, I get the feeling they'll try to rely a lot on like having contrasting colors to really just show their chops for making something look
Right.
amazing. But they didn't do that here, and
they didn't.
So glad they didn't. It made it feel so much more just calming and yeah.
All right, let's take these off.
Oh yeah,
we're doing that now.
That's right.
Oh, right. But with doing this show in such a way to where the characters are not really aware of this. You know how in Ghibli films there will often be the unconscious nature of the protagonist that positively affects the environment around them.
Sure, yeah.
In this aspect, Chisei basically brought...
it was a very conscious thing.
It was a very conscious thing in this, but to every other kind of trope in the way they would do this, they would have this be of some innate part of their nature that just kind of radiated out. But in this aspect, she had a memory, and she focused on the memory, and it was her good memory, and she basically shared that.
Right.
To be the thing that brought them into a place of positive remembrance to where things were before all this corruption and horrible things.
Which is awesome because it's showing that you don't have to be perfect in order to help people, basically.
Right.
That even in the brokenness that they all had, they were able to make something beautiful.
Yeah.
And that is...
That's just beautiful. Awesome. It's magical. It's gorgeous. It's humanity. It's fantastic. Love the world. Basically, I know Elias didn't have a big part in this episode. I'm kind of glad he didn't. But his line in the previous episode of telling Chisei to love the world because the world that she knew doesn't have to exist, in her mind as it does. She can basically move past that. She can love it for what it did give her.
Exactly.
And this is basically an aspect of where she took the positives of just a beautiful scenery that she saw at one point in her past to being the modus operandi for saving a couple's lives, basically.
Right.
And souls to some extent. So it was like her salvation she gave to them was born out of hardship and cruelty.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you could say it was a rose amongst the thorns kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and I really feel like that's something that will be just a theme moving forward for Chisei, is that she's going to have the thorns of life, so to speak, kind of choke her and try and drag her down. But she can still bloom amongst the thorns.
Right.
That's my not subtle poetic imagery. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I was thinking about when this whole episode was happening is that there was a saying that basically if you want to blame something for the bad stuff in your life, you have to blame it for the good stuff too.
Yeah.
Because the bad stuff that you've gone through has gotten you to where you are now, and a lot of the good stuff that you have, you might not have if not for the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And
I want to bring up a recurring theme. There have been a lot of characters that have been brought into Chisei's environment that have a very kind of they have tendencies towards not caring about their lives or their futures.
Sure.
The source of the corruption was not necessarily the girl, but she kind of identified herself as the core of the corruption when it was really Matthew and the abomination that really he had become, but also created. Yes. And yet she was saying end it all, which is an option that Chisei can't really, I think, entertain because it hits too close to home.
Exactly. Yep. And that's why I love that, because it both goes along with the parallels of magic sort of dying out,
Yep.
But it also goes with the parallels of her as a character, and the fact that she doesn't really care much about her existence or hasn't, but the whole nature of what a Sleighbegi is life.
Yeah.
So they really are like, whoever I don't know the creator of this story, but they clearly put a lot of time and effort into coming up with all the themes for this story and how they would show themselves, because
there's
really good.
There's a redemptive aspect to the whole story by having all these flawed circumstances and characters with really big problems going into situations where they save people from seemingly kind of smaller problems, but in doing so provide a lot of the answers, maybe unconsciously, to a lot of their own issues. And I'm guessing that's where things will move towards, future points in the show with Elias and Chise in particular.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that they didn't make it some kind of thing of where, just to get really specific here, about Mina just being the cat, but they made that kind of vague.
Right.
And I was like, wait a minute, so we're not supposed to know whether or not, because I think now at this case it's more likely that she wasn't the cat.
Right.
But it's the idea of like where, rebirth kind of comes from a place of people basically being a part of this cycle, but Chise's position at this point in the cycle was to not necessarily just keep the cycle going, or based on what they wanted, to just end it for them. She decided, well, no, I'd rather you just have a straight line and you go on, you just go forward into something else.
Okay.
And I wonder if there's something literal to be taken from that, because I don't see exactly what it is, because I don't know as much about this world's lore as I would like.
Right, yeah.
But if you want to take that metaphorically, what you can look at this is the idea of Chise's existence as a sleigh beggy.
Yeah.
Is, I would say, another aspect of a cycle.
Yes.
The universe or whatever creates these sleigh beggies, and they are these founts of magical power.
Right.
And if we're going to use like Newton's law of, you cannot be created or destroyed, it can only change form. That's kind of the perfect reincarnation kind of thing. Sleigh beggies' energy is probably dispersed into whatever, and then another one is formed at some point, and I'm sure there are lots of sleigh beggies, but the point is that there have been lots of sleigh beggies, but the point is that they're very rare. And I like the idea that Chise might have gotten a little bit of a taste of what it could be like for her if she just wanted to be a part of the cycle and just pass on.
Yeah.
But by her choice, she might be able to start a new line, a new life.
Right.
Instead of just being caught up in this cycle of death, rebirth, and not really much point to it all, she can actually choose a purpose.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's a good metaphor potentially, but I don't know if there's any literal application into the world.
Well, we don't actually know if she's going to be reborn yet when she dies, but what they've set up is that she's accepted the fact that if I'm going to die, that's okay, and that might be basically a forcing function or a wake-up call to her to live her life as best she can while she has it.
At the very least,
yes. Yeah, at the very least, and then the sort of the happy ending on top of a happy ending, since that would basically show how much she's grown as a person.
Yeah.
But then the happy ending on top of the happy ending can be that, but you actually get to keep on living. You just change form or whatever.
Right, and I like how they hinted at that with the sorcerer, basically going through all these like disgusting means, like, hey, you might even be able to live on forever. I was like, in my head, making mental note. Sorcerer's desire potentially to live forever. And I think that's actually what the sorcerer's motivation was. He was looking for another means to which to break the cycle for his research.
Yes, and he was testing it out on somebody because he didn't want to use it on himself.
No, of course not. So he is despicably disgusting, and now we understand why mages and sorcerers don't get along. But I don't want to go into that. I want to make this point about the cycle still some more. Is that Chise is a fount of life. Yes, she is a source. She is the source as far as the show is concerned. And by having her make these little ripples in the environment around her, those can have feedback. It can just be sent out and eventually wrap around and come back to her. And sure. I am thinking that the way that this can end very positively for her, I'm sure way later in the show, but in the future, is that all these good things that she releases out into the environment are a way of actually releasing a lot of the stress on her body. So in that sense, I think that could help. But it could also be such that there's a convection of this magic, and she's actually able to receive a constant give and take, a cycle, if you will, of her releasing out into the environment and also using the magic that rebounds from that back into her to be instead of just a source, to be one of those fountains that, goes water up and then it goes down and then feeds and then goes up, basically a cycle. Yeah. So I think there's some really cool positive things that can come from that.
Oh yeah, me too.
But what were you wanting to say about the sorcerer stuff?
I was going to make a connection that you're probably going to hate me for making.
Another alchemy connection?
Yes.
Okay.
So, alchemy, dark episodes. We've seen animal transmutations.
Yeah.
With dogs, this time cats. Dogs and cats, very
this
similar.
Is episode 5. Was that
similar.
Episode 5 and
It was episode 4 in Brotherhood.
That's right. Yeah.
And here's the thing. What was the name of the woman? Mina. What was the name of the girl? Nina.
Oh my gosh.
So, I'm just saying, this episode may have been a Full Metal Alchemist reference.
Is a little bit on the nose. You're right. You're right.
Like, that was a lot of things that lined up. So,
quite a few. Yeah. It is another aspect, though, of something where I'm not necessarily a fan of it in some shows, is where they give you the premise for a potential story in the previous episode, and then this episode they actually connected all the dots for us. But last episode I was super confused. Like, there was a lot of things about it where I was not able to really follow why they were showing us these two characters. And yet in this one they just decided, okay, we're going to go into the corruption and we're going to understand all this. And I think that made this episode so much more impactful than the previous one.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Right, because the last one was set up for this one.
Right, so it's kind of a mini two-parter, and we haven't done that in Ancient Magus Bride so far, so this was
a new experience.
A new experience, yeah.
I don't mind if they end up making that be a semi-regular thing.
Right.
One of the comparisons that I would like to make for this is, if you compare something like, say, Cowboy Bebop to, say, Black Lagoon, one of the things that I like more about Black Lagoon, like specifically than Cowboy Bebop, which isn't many, right, is that they basically took more time with the episodes and it made them feel a lot more just fleshed out, and I ended up caring a lot more about what was happening.
How is this relevant here?
Because, especially in a fantasy setting, when they want to make the world seem wondrous and magical and stuff like that, I would really rather them spend a little bit more time on it than less. Basically, quality over quantity. Because if it feels like, okay, next episode, let's introduce a new magical thing and have a little story that resolves by the end of the episode, I could see that basically getting repetitive and the wonder of it being lost, because you kind of know what's going to happen, even if you don't know what the individual episode story is going to be.
Yeah, I don't think that they had a problem with that this episode. If anything, I'm talking about how the structure moves from just simply episodic to double episodic.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that applies here, because also this is quantity. I was not debating that this was a better way to do things. You were saying we want more quality over quantity. Yeah. This is not necessarily quality. This is actually quantity, because you got more content to a specific story, which doesn't necessarily make it better. If anything, the previous episode was set up for this one, which is a way of doing it to be more linear story, but by having it end so abruptly in this manner, it's actually an episodic story just made longer.
Right.
So it's not necessarily a quality over quantity, it's quantity. We don't know.
Well, we can agree to disagree on that.
I know, but it's not necessarily better, but it is definitely more.
Okay, I was talking about quantity from the perspective of how many different stories we get.
Okay.
Like to make the world like as big as possible, you know? If they went one episode at a time, then they would be able to basically tell a lot more.
But yeah, I don't see that having more stories gives you actually more context of anything about the world. I found that the linear stories in particular actually give you more info, because one of the things that the episodic ones do is they struggle with contextualizing things that happen in one-off episodes with things that happen in other one-off episodes. But when it's linear, there's a progression. So from like Chise's perspective, I would like to see her kind of opening up to seeing more of the world. And I don't really necessarily care whether or not it's in an episodic or linear format, but I would prefer at some point to have more things where we get a progression of the perspective that she has.
Gotcha.
Because right now what we're doing is we're kind of doing the little, the little bits where we have, okay, now we're going to have the dragon episode, now we're going to have the cat episode. Mm-hmm. And I think that's fine.
But you got a little bit bummed out that they were teasing like linear storytelling and then they made it not be linear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm glad that this episode happened because it was such a powerful episode.
It was.
But when I'm thinking about it in the context of the broader show, it's still episodic.
Yes.
But they relied on kind of the formula of a linear story by having a cliffhanger, and like having a little bit of a broader story, bigger conflicts.
Well, yeah, and they did that even previously, leading up to the dragon episode, by having Chise get taken away at the very last episode and have this mysterious new figure.
I think that's good because it's an actual like a little snippet of a linear story, but it's not even close to this where they had an entire episode building up.
Sure.
An episode ending. So here's where they can do this really well and keep it up, is they opened up a lot of questions in these two episodes. Yeah. And they gave us answers to the episodic story, but they didn't give us answers to the linear story that they're telling between Chise and Elias. So what they can do is start to have a point in the story where Elias actually is the problem of that episode. And they go into why he is the way he is, what he is, and what the problem is to solve. And if Chise is, as always, the key to that, there could be some cool interactions that we haven't seen before. And it could be more of a, okay, let's pull on characters we've already been introduced to, and utilize their knowledge in help of whatever Elias is dealing with. Because I like the idea that Chise is on a clock, but for some reason I get the vibe that they want us to see how similar Elias and Chise are.
Right.
Not necessarily just how different they are. Because they are different. But we don't need...
They do have a lot of similarities.
But they have a lot of similarities, but those are way more subtle than the differences.
Yes. Yeah. Chise does not have a skull head mask thing.
She is not all in black. She's all in white.
Right.
She has a human face. He does not.
She does not appear to be immortal.
Right, there are a lot of things there that I would like them to explore, and I think this set of episodes, if anything, is actually all set up potentially for the Chise Elias story.
Also potentially for the sorcerers doing bad
sorcerers versus mages story. Yes, that was a good thing. I feel like might have been heavy-handed a little bit much, but I like that they differentiated the truly evil sorcerer from the pair of sorcerers that came to grab Chise, and they're like, no, we're not evil. We are trying to free you, but we can't fully trust you either because we're scared of you too.
And I like that they didn't end up actually having there be a battle between Elias and them.
Right.
They basically just had him show up, and he's like, no, don't come near Chise, right? Well, and then the conflict was basically over.
The conflict was over, I think, because sorcerers have like 2-bit magic. Like they're like casual little scientists roaming around.
Unless they can force Elias to drink a potion,
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that they showed different aspects of sorcerers in this little mini arc, and I think that makes the linear story ties pretty interesting, because the sorcerer that was at the tavern in the past might have been more of the old way of doing sorcery, you know? Like that was a long time ago. We don't know how long, but it was a while ago.
And it seems, and I think they mentioned that sorcerers are actually rising to prominence now, as opposed to being just sort of like mystics.
So he was maybe a more wandering sorcerer, kind of a little bit more powerful.
Wandering because he didn't want anyone to figure out what he actually did and burn him at the stake.
Right, but these sorcerers seem to be more modern. They seem to be more legitimate, I would say.
Yeah.
Like they have antagonistic views towards mages in general.
But they went to university and got their PhD in sorcery and licensed to practice.
The point is, these weren't the type of people that would casually regard human beings as ingredients or cats as ingredients. Yeah. They were trying not to actually kill, anyone there.
Yes, although the guy had a deep voice, and and
he hurt the fairy.
That's pretty like he's pretty much guilty. Like at this point.
Well, I mean, in a joking manner, yes. But I think one of the things that they'll bring up is that the sorcerers aren't necessarily bad. It's that they have problems with mages like Elias. And Elias isn't necessarily good, and he's not necessarily bad. It's the idea that he is potentially corrupted, which I think was another little foreshadowing bit with this episode, which is why I love this episode, because metaphorically, I think it's the entire show wrapped into one episode. Possibly. I just wish they didn't have as much setup focused on it, because the setup, I think, could have been handled a little bit better. That's all. All. But the fact that Elias has his little, form that he can shift into when he needs to be stealthy and stuff. It looks just like the corruption.
It does look rather similar. Yes.
And we just got an idea as to how these kinds of corrupted things can come about by people doing horrible things to other living things.
Right. And the question is his shadow magic something that he just has naturally? And it's like, okay, I picked that specialization, because why not? Or is it like, okay, no, that happened because you tried to perform human transmutation or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. And is he, having a sleigh beggy around, Chise, for
medication?
For the same kind of experimentation that the evil sorcerer was, but not in a harmful way, in more of the observation, kind of the note-taking kind of way, because he might eventually want to use Chise for something that could save him. Right. Something that could remove his corruption, but he might need Chise to be a little bit more than just a resource. So he might need her to be an actual mage in order to do it.
Do you know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
Stardust.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've got the girl that is the
the fount source of life,
the fount plot relevance, right? That everyone wants. And then there's the comparison breaks down a little bit when you compare Tristan to Elias.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't compare them at all.
But the stories still end with them getting married and living together forever, basically.
Right. I more compare it from the aspect of the star to Chise, rather than the characters themselves. Yes. And the overarching story being about a seeking for this this source of light and life, and how this this person who is being valued a lot as a resource is actually going to come into their own person and be someone that's more than just a thing in the sky.
Right. Because the big thing that stood out to me for that was when Chise says, what was it? I'm his now, or something like that. It made me think of the whole, giving the heart. Spoiler alert.
The aspect of Chise making that statement, that decision to the other sorcerers, was pretty impressive, because
I did not expect them to do that this soon.
Right. Well, I don't necessarily think that she is in the right state of mind yet. She hasn't broken free from her past.
Right, exactly.
She is making a decision.
Exactly.
And that's what's really powerful about it. It might not be the best decision,
but she is actively taking action.
Yes, Jacob. That's how you can do active things. You have to actively take action.
But as opposed to apathetically take action.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
You can be in a state of passivity.
Right.
Or
passivity.
Yeah, it's a word.
Yeah.
Or you can be kind of apathetic, like you're talking about as well. And I would say that Chise was in a situation that tested a little bit of her own spirit. Like,
right.
It was a little bit of where she was like, well, wait, do I care about this? And I think one of the coolest things about this was she reacted stronger to the fairy being hurt than she did really to the threat of her own life. And I think that's something where the essence of humanity, that spark to be someone that helps others, someone that has love or compassion, cannot leave her fully no matter the hardship that she endures. So when she sees this not necessarily so innocent creature, but
yeah, like it did try to eat her,
but very defenseless creature being hurt, she couldn't stand for it. And it's a very simple motivation, but it wasn't that made her decide to choose Elias in that regard.
No,
it was the idea of he had valued her.
Yep.
And even though she probably knows he's not valuing her in the best way, it's something that I feel like can't be understated as like, oh, well, he said nice things to her and now she just gives herself to him. That's so unrealistic. No, actually, if you have someone that actually like takes effort to value you, despite it being not necessarily the best relationship, there's a lot of powerful things that come, connections that come from that.
Yes, it very much matters, even if why they value you isn't the best. But if they
exactly.
But when we pick up that someone is valuing us,
right,
and there is a difference between just valuing you
as
and
a person,
you as a person, and
value what you can do for them, right? Yeah, exactly.
And even if Elias certainly values what she can do, I'm guessing that basically she was able to recognize that at least some part of him values me.
Right. Or even if she can't tell the difference, that's enough for her right now.
Right.
And I think that there's something interesting that they're choosing to go through with this aspect of the relationship between the two protagonists, because this is something that is definitely not without its flaws.
Absolutely.
The relationship that they have.
Yeah.
It has a lot of problems, and yet the story doesn't seem to have this sense of urgency with solving those flaws, which I think is kind of a breath of fresh air, because then I'm more immersed into the story,
right,
rather than getting pulled out by feeling the writer's desire to just like make things back to normal as quick as possible.
Right. This kind of feels like a difference, like with writing, people will generally fall in more or less into one of two categories, with either being exploratory writers, where they are like, okay, they know their characters very well and they go into the world and they sort of
discover the story.
They discover the story, right? And then the people who are like, okay, I've got this awesome story I'm going to do, and these are all the high points I'm going to hit, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and here's how it's going to get to the end, right? And this very much feels like an exploratory story, not just from the world perspective, but also the characters, because it is taking its time with those points that we would be a bit more wondering, like, when are you going to get around to that?
But if you were to force that in this environment, in this premise, it would feel a little bit like the writer doesn't believe in their own ability to actually create a good story.
Oh, sure.
And I feel like that makes me trust the writer enough to where when I see things like, oh, this episodic thing got a little bit off on their formula, I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't care. In the grand scheme of things, I don't care.
Right.
Because the inner story is still very, very compelling and very good.
It's doing justice by the characters, like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which means, hey, if there are little hiccups in the story along the way, that's fine.
Yeah. Last thing I want to say is they casually did some essence of time travel, which I know it's not really time travel.
It was like memory walking.
Memory inception kind of thing. But since Chise couldn't interact with it, what I'm thinking.
What if she goes into Elias's memories?
She's going to go into Elias's memories.
Yeah.
This is all totally foreshadowing.
They did show a little baby-looking Elias creature thing in the opening. So
I still don't know if that's baby Elias.
I don't know. I mean, they showed him. They showed him like grown as some sort of creature. So I'm thinking.
Yeah, I liked the more like dog Elias thing that was like all monster.
Oh yeah. That's what I was talking about. They showed
the big one.
Oh right, yes.
Yeah, that wasn't baby Elias.
No. I think that's the true form of Elias, full grown.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Wow, this was a long discussion bit. I think it was good to go through it because there was a lot of conflicting thoughts about this episode, but also a lot of powerful emotions.
Yeah.
The essence of this show being a transformative story.
Yeah.
Not necessarily redemptive, but transformative.
Yeah.
It can move towards redemptive eventually, but that needs to be based around the choices of the characters involved.
Exactly. Yep.
So it'll be really exciting to see that.
Will.
And if you want to see the next episode of our reaction to Ancient Magus Bride, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. Get on early access. And yeah, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.